Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into a real puzzle on the world stage, South Africa's foreign policy. See, on the one hand, it says it's not aligned, but on the other, its actions seem to be telling a completely different story, especially when it comes to Russia. So today we're going to unpack the sources to find the hidden blueprint that might just explain everything.
Right, so this is the big question, isn't it? It's what has so many international observers scratching their heads. The South African government keeps saying, we're neutral, but its actions have raised some serious questions. So what is really going on behind the curtain?
And when you look, the sources point to this huge gap between words and actions. The official line, it's all about non-alignment and peace. But then you see what's actually happening. Skipping out on UN votes against Russia, doing joint naval drills, and there are even these really serious allegations of shipping arms. It's a contradiction that feels like way more than just a mixed message.
And here is where the whole thing just flips on its head. The sources we're looking at suggest that the key to this puzzle isn't found in today's global politics at all. Nope. To get the answer, we have to look inside South Africa, at a domestic policy blueprint that's more than 50 years old.
And that brings us to the absolute core of this entire explainer, something called the National Democratic Revolution, or the NDR. The sources argue this isn't just some policy paper sitting in a drawer. It's the ideological engine that's been driving almost everything. Wow, yeah, this quote really just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? It argues that the NDR isn't just another policy, it's the entire philosophical bedrock of the ruling party, the African National Congress. The argument here is that without the NDR, the party essentially loses its entire identity.
Okay, so what in the world is the NDR? Well, according to analysts, it's a theory straight out of the Soviet era, and it happens in two stages. Stage 1, national liberation. That means seizing control of the state. Then comes Stage 2, using the power of that state to slowly, piece by piece, transform the economy and society into a socialist one, and eventually, according to the original theory, a communist one.
Now, to really grasp how much influence the NDR has, we have to trace it back to where it came from. And this wasn't an idea that started in Africa. Its DNA is 100% Soviet Union.
And you can see how it evolved right here on this timeline. I mean, it kicks off with Lenin way back in 1920, gets hardened under Stalin, and then by the 1960s, it's packaged up and formalized as a key part of Soviet foreign policy, a tool to influence all these newly independent countries during the Cold War.
So you really got to get this two-step process. Step 1 is winning political power. In South Africa, that happened in 1994. Check. But then comes Step 2, using that state power to systematically roll out what the Soviet theorists called anti-capitalist transformations, basically to remake the entire economy from the ground up.
So, the big question is, how did a theory that was designed in Moscow become the official, guiding ideology for South Africa's ruling party? Well, the answer is in a pretty clever piece of political adaptation.
According to the sources, it all comes down to this idea: colonialism of a special type. See, back in 1962, the South African Communist Party redefined apartheid. It wasn't just racial segregation anymore. It was a unique kind of internal colonialism. And by reframing it that way, they could take the entire Soviet NDR model, which was made for decolonizing nations, and apply it directly to South Africa.
And this was the watershed moment, the game changer. At their 1969 conference in Morogoro, Tanzania, the ANC officially adopted the NDR. From that day forward, it became the party's definitive, long-term blueprint, shaping not just the fight against apartheid, but their entire vision for how they would govern in the future.
Now, the sources are really clear on this. This isn't just some dusty old history. Analyst Anthea Jeffrey points to specific modern policies as direct proof that the second stage of the NDR is in motion. We're talking about things like cadre deployment, putting party loyalists in key government jobs, and major proposals around land and healthcare that are designed to massively increase state control. And it all, she says, comes from a fundamental hostility to private business.
All right, so let's tie this all together. How does this 50-plus-year-old domestic blueprint explain South Africa's really confusing foreign policy, especially in a country like Ukraine, today?
And this is where you see the real ideological collision. It's fascinating. Richard Stevenson's analysis highlights that back in 2015, Ukraine passed these decommunization laws. They legally condemned their whole Soviet past and banned communist symbols. That single act, he argues, puts Ukraine in direct, fundamental opposition to the ANC, whose entire political playbook, the NDR, is a product of that exact same Soviet communist ideology.
So when you put it all together, here's the main takeaway from the sources. South Africa's pro-Russia tilt isn't just about old friendships or being part of the BRICS Club. It's about ideological consistency. It's the natural foreign policy outcome of a domestic blueprint, the NDR, that is, at its core, anti-Western. From that viewpoint, a country like Ukraine, which has legally rejected communism, isn't a neutral party. It's an ideological opponent.
And that leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? The sources we've looked at present this national democratic revolution as the master key, the one thing you need to understand South Africa's policies, both at home and around the world. So the question for a 21st century nation facing incredibly modern challenges is this: is this Cold War blueprint a real map to the future, or is it an ideological relic chaining the country to its past?